So I'm Chuck Marshall, and I'm currently a Class 1 director and treasurer officership in Warbirds of America. I currently also am secretary treasurer of the North American Trainer Association. And not to be outdone by those, I happen to be the finance officer for the TRAIRON, which is the Training Squadron for the CAF. And because of those three, I've been drafted to do the secretarial treasureship for FAST International. So all three of those hats are what occupy my time. And when that's not happening, I'm flying and enjoying these wonderful warbirds that we all love and care for. My duties with Warbirds of America is more of a fiduciary oversight duty, simply on the basis that we have an executive director and we have accounting and finance done by the national headquarters. So it's a busy schedule. It progressively got more busy because I kept raising my hand, and now my hands are down to my lap, and so I don't raise my hand anymore. In fact, I'm actually looking for ways to pass work down, but it's my own doing. I happened to manage to get myself drafted during the Vietnam buildup, 1966. And Uh, on my way back from doing the physical for that inductee status, I saw a billboard on the highway. It says, enlist in the Air Force, choose your career field, and delay your enlistment 90 days. Of the three things that it said, the one thing I was most interested in is the delay enlistment 90 days, because I just was managing a restaurant in northern Michigan, and I needed to get up there to do that. In fact, it was dropping a class in my junior year that caused me to actually get changed from my status, and boom, I'm in the Army. And I go down to the Air Force recruiter, and I said, I want to join the Air Force. And so he let me take the test, and he said, okay, fine, we'll take you. And I said, what don't you need in Vietnam? And he laughed at me. He says, well, Minuteman missiles. I said, fine, give me Minuteman missiles. I'll be a Minuteman missile mechanic. So that's the entry level to my Air Force career, was as a Minuteman missile mechanic. And while I was in tech school, there was a aero club at Shepherd Air Force Base that I've managed to join. And it became my morning detail duty to go to the aero club every day. And in that process, I learned to fly back 55 years ago for $5 for the airplane, $5 for the instructor, and a nickel for gas. And it launched my love and insatiable flying that I still love today. Probably the most significant thing that I've ever done in my life is learn to fly. I'm proud of saying I was in the Air Force, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life, mainly because I learned to fly. And I learned the meaning of the word no, and I learned that you can operate in a big organization and find your way if you're so desirous to improve and accommodate the structure. It was very rich for me for experience. It has led me to all the great adventures in my life. It's because that 90-degree turn directed me away from a crazy degree in hotel and restaurant management to what I am today. And really what that is all about is, how did I become a CPA from being a missile mechanic? You know, there's not a direct link there. And there were some interesting things that happened to me while I was in the Air Force to happen to realize that for me, becoming an accountant was one that I would never have to hire one, because I could be able to do what they were doing. And it has served me well in all these years. There were a couple primary bases. Shepherd was one of them, and the other one was at Rantoul, Illinois. Once you agreed to become a missileer in all forms, the Strategic Air Command kept a protective suffix on your Air Force Specialty Code, so that other parts of the service couldn't take you. And that was the other interesting thing about protection, that I wasn't going to head someplace else, because I was a missile mechanic, but my specialty was refrigeration and air conditioning on the warhead and the guidance package. And but in order to become a refrigeration specialist, you had to learn about air conditioning that would be the same technique that you have in your refrigerator or your air conditioner or commercial brine chiller. So there was a demand for air conditioning people, but I was protected because my skill set was really directed at keeping the missile cool and the environment of the missile silo cool and the proper temperature and humidity. Well, the thing about the Minuteman missile back in the 60s, I mean, there's still Minutemans on watch today, but our missiles back then were pretty rudimentary. They were just brand new. They could go 7,000 miles downrange. They were accurate, and it scared the hell out of the Russians. And we had 1,500 of them. And they were all in hardened silos, and it was just the most effective deterrent that you could have. We also had at the time Titan missiles, which were much larger and missiles that could be launched from where they were and travel any way, any shape around the world to be targeted. Whereas Minuteman had a limited range, and so therefore all of the bases were in the upper Midwest, and most everything went over the North Pole, and of course that's all Russia. And we were in a big detente with Russia during those years, and the Cold War was going on, and Vietnam was going on. It was heady times for a commitment to the military service, and I took it pretty serious. It was pretty cool to penetrate a missile site in the middle of the night because the missile had shut down. And by the time you got down to the site and penetrated to the bottom of the missile, as soon as you get to the bottom of the ladder, you could see the missile sitting in the tube and with a spotlight on it on a U.S. flag. And it was just like, I really have a purpose here in life. And it was really, and that experience never left me. You know, it's like, it's pretty cool. The Minutemen were in clusters of 15, and there was a central launch control facility that controlled those 15 missiles. And in the launch control facility, above ground, they had like a mini motel scenario. They had bunks and they had a mess hall and places for the maintenance people and the security police to stay that maintained that. But all the sites were guarded through electronic means, and the missiles were monitored for their on order status. And when they went down, there were various reasons why they went down, and that brought maintenance to high alert. So, you know, we were constantly flying to the sites on helicopters to service the missiles. And that was also pretty cool because, you know, it's like anything else of national defense. It was high priority, and to participate in that gave you a real sense of contribution and effort. And that progressed to finishing my Air Force 4 years, then graduating with an accounting degree and entering public accounting. And I was 4 years kind of behind my peer group because those that didn't go to the service. And I also flew a lot, so I was fairly aggressive to grow my career. And I did that. I spent 4 years in public accounting, and then I left to go to work for one of my clients in the recreational vehicle industry. And I spent 8 years in that industry. And then I left that company and started my firm, mainly because I could fly. And this was the year that the microcomputer became a viable business product. We're talking about 1979 year here. And I saw these machines as being everywhere. And so I became somewhat of an expert at that time on the implementation of management accounting systems on basically the IBM PC. And that continued to grow. We grew the firm, 4 offices in 3 states. And that was a great run for 20 years until I had a little cancer event that did a 90-degree change in my life and put me in the hospital in Chicago, whereupon I had an epiphany that essentially came down as this: I don't want to work anymore, only because the doctor scared me sufficiently enough that I wouldn't have a lot of years left in my life, and I wanted to concentrate on my family, and I wanted to do things for myself. So progressing to myself and being selfish, I thought, I've been a sailor all my life, and I'm a pilot, but why don't I marry the two? So therein lies my love affair with float flying. So I decided that I would get my float plane rating. I'd buy a brand new airplane, and I'd teach myself how to fly a tail dragger, put it on floats, and off we go. So that was 1999, 2000. And after the year of the first float year, I missed having a tail dragger airplane. And I happened to manage to go to a splash in at Thunder Over the Lake, which was in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. And it was advertised as a seaplane fly-in and a air show. Well, I was the only seaplane that flew in, actually float plane, to be honest. And while I was camped on the beach, here comes a Royal Gull sliding into the harbor and taxis right up to the beach, and two guys get out. One guy was Scott Duck, who I happen to know because Scotty lives a mile and a half from me in Indiana. And I said, Scott, what are you doing here? And he said, I'm the air boss. Dacey's Air Show's there. We got a show here going. Here's my buddy, John Moore. Well, of course, I didn't know who John Moore was at that time. And John says, oh, yeah, nice airplane you got. And I said, well, you talking about yours or mine? And I said, because I had a little single engine float plane, and John had this beautiful Royal Gull. And so we chatted a little bit. He says, yeah, he says, come on out to the airport and watch us. We're doing a performance tonight. So I did that. And when I saw John do his Stearman low-level aerobatic ad, I thought, I got to have a Stearman. Next year, I started flying formation in the Stearman, and that went on for a couple years until the guys that I was flying with back in Michigan parked their Stearmans in the fall and continued on with T6s, and that pushed me into, well, I got to buy a T6 now to fly with them. So, it's kind of a what-to story, but needless to say, the T6 introduced me to Warbirds in a big, big way. A lot of the NATA guys knew that I was an accountant. I was doing CAF record keeping, and so they kind of said, well, you can do that for NATA. And that was how I got involved with NATA. At that same time, Warbirds of America was going through some changes in the sense that they needed to upgrade their financial reporting from a reviewed set of financial statements to audited financial statements, and they didn't really understand that realm. And Rick Siegfried, a board member at the time, said, hey, Marshall's an accountant. Maybe we should get Marshall to come and help us out here. So Harold Cannon was the president at the time, and Harold called me up and and asked if I'd be willing to help him and just do this project as a Class 2 director, and no obligation. I'll be able to, help him and then move on. Well, obviously that didn't work so well because they kept me on, and I couldn't perform as a treasurer as a Class 2 director, so they had to make me a Class 1 director and then the treasurership. And I've been very happy ever since to be able to support Warbirds of America. My wife said to me, she said we needed more seats in our float plane. At that point, we had just 2 seats. So therein lies the Haviland Beaver story. I went from 2 seats to 6 seats. And that's been another whole realm of excitement and pleasure. And one of the unique things about that is I happen to have a summer home on Beaver Island out in the middle of Lake Michigan. I established a seaplane base on an 800-acre lake on the south end of the island, and so I could be in the straight world, fly from my home in Indiana, where I had a little base here, and back to the island, and that's kind of how my airplane world evolved. Well, the Stearman is an Army paint scheme, and it was a very nice restoration done by a fellow by the name of Robert Smith in Elkhart, Indiana. He was a Bendix engineer, and he retired at 65 and started the restoration project. It took Bob a number of years to finish the airplane, and he was a great mechanic. He had some challenges flying the airplane, but he owned it for a couple of years after we restored it, and that's when I bought it. And I've had it 20 years now, and I maintain it through the hiring of other IAs and mechanics to keep it in top shape. I installed 5 cameras on it back before GoPro was even invented. These are Sony bullet cams with a little cheesy camera recorder that then got improved. And on the wing, I have 4 cameras on the wing, 2 outboard, 2 inboard, 2 facing forward, 2 facing back, and then 1 on the tail. And I originally installed those cameras so that I could help guys in formation training, because if I flew wing, I could see everybody, and if I flew lead, I could see everybody. I could position the cameras in such a way that in a fingertip strong left or fingertip strong right, I'd be able to point out after the flight how you were doing station keeping. Also turned out well because I did scenic rides in it, and I'd burn a CD after the ride, and that was all part of the deal. So, the scenic ride business in the Stearman and the scenic ride business in the Beaver are kind of behind me now because I just too many things to do, and it was all on a will call basis. And will call scenic flying is very disruptive because you're on a venture, you're doing something, and somebody calls you up and says, "I want to go for a ride," and it's great, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work very well if you've got an orderly life. But I had a great run at it and flew lots of hours. I've probably got more than a couple thousand hours in my Stearman, and took me, to the T6. The T6 is a lovely airplane to fly in formation. It has adequate power. It has great stability, and it's an airplane that demands attention. And when you do it right, it feels great. The steerman is a little more wiggly in the air. It's a little harder to stay in position with the steerman, and if you get out of position, you can't use power to get yourself there. So you learn to stay in position, which teaches you good awareness and skills to anticipate things. So I came from steerman formation flying to T6 flying, which I thought was a little bit easier to do than if you just started out in a heavy tail dragger kind of airplane. And I kind of emphasize that when I help new formation trainees kind of transition, give them some techniques that would allow them to see the big picture quicker. There was one occasion, and I'll share this story with you. So I'm on Beaver Island, and one of the young kids on the island were kind of neighbors of ours on the lake, and he might have been 13, 12 or 13, and he asked me if he could get a ride on my steerman, and I said sure. So I took him for a ride, and it was a real gentle ride. We just drove around the island. It was not bumpy. It was really pretty docile. And about the time we start to come back, I'm probably 2 miles from the airport, and I see these little spots on my windshield, and I'm not sure exactly what it is. But then I realize, geez, he's gotten sick. So, being a good kid, being a good trooper, he pulled his T-shirt, sweatshirt, or whatever he had on the shirt, and deposited his results in the shirt. Gets out, and he doesn't get hardly anything in the airplane, but he feels terrible about it, and he's just heartsick about it. And so I will advance the story this way. Every year, he was from California, so we went flying again later on that summer, and he says, I want to be a pilot. And I said, that's great. When you go back to California, I want you to sign up for lessons and have your dad pay for lessons, but I want you to do it in a tail dragger. Well, I don't know if they do that. I said, you'll find it. So this kid learned over time. Every summer we flew together and progressed. And probably the most notable thing about this is that last spring, I watched Dylan graduate from the Air Force Academy during the COVID celebration, along with his parents. And he learned to fly from that experience, and he became quite a competent pilot. And today, he's in jet training today at Randolph Air Force Base. Others have gone on to fly, but Dylan was really right there and kind of took off with it, and I feel real good about being helpful there. I've had a couple of interesting experiences solo with one with my steerman. I was just telling somebody the other day that in the fall of the year it gets cold, so the steerman, I have a cover for the front cockpit, a tonneau cover kind of thing. And Oh, it was a nice day, and I went out, pushed the steerman out, and I went flying. I had the tonneau cover on, and I'm out in the air. I thought, well, I'll do a couple of loops and rolls, and when I came out of the second series, my stick wouldn't return to normal. It was pinned against the side, and I was in a constant 60-degree turn, 360 degrees in a 60-degree bank. And I could both hands, I couldn't get the stick to return to center. Now I'm only about 10 miles north of the airport, so I just kind of circled my way all the way around. I got to the airport and landed in an arc and got out, took the tonneau cover off, wondering what the heck had happened. What did I break? And what happened was I didn't latch my front seatbelt, and my parachute pack came out of the seat, hit the tonneau cover, and fell and lodged itself between the frame and my stick. And so that turned out to be a terrible disaster that was mitigated by the fact that I could at least control the airplane sufficient enough to bring it back. And that was another gotcha item for checklist and routine and how you do things, and not just, oh, I remember how I left it last time. And the other experience that I have was another faux pas on a mental state. And this was in my Husky floatplane, which had happened to be on skis at this time. And so I'd fly around in the wintertime chasing snowmobiles. And when I'd come across a lake where there was a lot of lake fishermen, I would land and chat with them. And part of the result of that was I'd maybe pick up four or five bluegills and a mess of fish for the night just by chatting with them, or give them a ride. So on my way back from Kalamazoo this one trip, I landed on this little lake in Michigan called Fish Lake, and there was a bay at the north end, and so I landed on the big lake and I taxied towards these fishermen in this bay. And when I entered the bay, all of a sudden I began to sink, and I brought the power back up, and I got into all of this slush, and it flew ice and water everywhere all over the airplane. And now I'm going full power right at these fishermen, and I managed to spin the airplane around under power at kind of like a high-speed turn, and I went around the backside of the bay and back out again. And I was going to stop in the big lake, but I hit a bunch of pucker willies at the entranceway and launched me into the air. And now I'm flying, and I'm only 10 miles from Elkhart. So I continued to fly the airplane back to the Elkhart, and I couldn't see out the windshield. It was just full of ice, and the struts were full of ice with just this ugly ice. But I didn't get anything on the prop, and so I had power, but it was marginal performance all the way back. And when I got back and landed in Elkhart, people couldn't believe how much ice was on my airplane. And of course, there were so many things that I did wrong there. First off, when I entered the bay, there was a stream coming in from the north, and so it was kind of, thin ice. I didn't break through all the way, but what I did is I broke through the first layer of crust on into a slush layer, and I got into the slush, and it was the slush that blew out over everything. Because this was in February, we had good ice everywhere. I couldn't believe that this airplane could fly with that much ice on it. Those are the things that come to my mind about never agains for me. But I have not had any experiences with engine outs or, well, I don't even know how to describe it. I've been lucky. Well, I've had great teachers, I got to tell you. One of the things about being an accountant is that accountants tend to be deal in symmetry, in the sense that I think of things as being balanced. So if you have multiple coefficients on one side of the equation, you need to balance the other side. And part of that all is acceptance of procedures, the acceptance of checklists, the acceptance of things that are known to be facts and known to be true. And if you're honest about them and you're not so cavalier and creative, it adds to your level of safety because you're doing best practices learned from all kinds of experience bases. And I kind of think that I'm in that realm, and I don't approach things lightly. I am serious about flying and the safe aspects of flying, and I think that bodes well if you just have good luck and Mother Nature is kind to you, and you can have great experiences. My 50 years of flying have been extremely satisfying. 2017, the FAA, through some recommendations by some of my buddies, gave me the Wilbur Wright Master Pilot Award, and I cherish that because I stayed active all those years. It wasn't, early 2 years and then 30 years of not flying, and then 15 years of active flying. And I've been flying ever since, continuously since 1965, 66. Still love it.